Welcome back to Inspired or Acquired. This is the podcast where we interview real business owners, talk real numbers, and ask them whether or not they would want to sell their business. So we have a awesome entrepreneur joining us today. Ben Tiggelaar is coming from Austin, Texas. He is going to tell us about all the different ventures that he has, but his main business these days is DataTel, an IT services and MSP business that is doing great and growing steadily. And as always, I'm joined by Clint Fiore, business broker out of Texas. So Ben, it's good to see you. How are you?
Great to see you. Love hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So for folks who don't know your background, tell us, maybe a little bit of what you've done previously and then how you ended up becoming owner of DataTel.
Sure. My background in entrepreneurship started when I was in fourth grade, and my dad had me read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that was kind of the genesis of thinking about what I wanted to do in my life. And lots of businesses until then, but professionally, I decided that going and working for a bunch of professional business owners would be a really good path to go and learn how to do this thing right out of undergrad. So I went and worked in private equity for 4 years at 2 different shops. And then I acquired a healthcare services company based out of Austin, Texas, and which is called Enable Dental. And then I operated that for about 5 years, sold the company, and bought an IT services company called DataTel, which I'm currently operating in about 16 months into operation. So I acquired in June of 2023. So that's kind of a super quick background of where I was and where I'm at now.
All right. Awesome. And give us the scoop on DataTel. Who are your customers? How many team members do you have? What does the business look like now?
Yeah, DataTel, we've got 34, 35 employees. We are doing about 8 million of revenue. We've got a variety of different types of clients. A lot are based in Idaho and in the Pacific Northwest, in Washington, Oregon area. And we serve anything from small business, think 10 users or 10 employees, all the way up to some of our larger clients. We've got a couple of clients that are 20,000 plus employees, for which we provide pretty specialized services to them. So kind of a wide gamut, honestly, but most of the core is in, we've done really well locally in our regions. And now we're starting to carve out some niches within, the technical aspects that we've seen success in. And we're going to try to build functional practices out of that.
I love MSPs. I think it's such a great sector to be in. I love this acquisition, everything about it, Ben. It's really what so many people are trying to find. It's got all the things you like in an acquisition. You've got pretty good size and scale. You got sticky customers with a recurring revenue piece, and it's kind of a necessity for most people. Like it's one of the last things they would get rid of if you're doing good work and taking care of people's technology. I know it's a little early because you just bought it last year, but this show, we like to just jump right into talking numbers and values and the sell or not sell conversation. You're a little bit premature, I think, for that conversation, but I did want to hear just can you share a little bit about where was the revenue at when you bought it? Where is it today? I don't know have you shared publicly what you paid for it? Is that knowledge we can have, or tell us a little bit more about the mechanics of the deal and the numbers if you can.
Yeah. So I acquired the company. It was doing roughly 6 million of revenue.
Okay.
And then I acquired a business about 3 months ago that's based in Portland, and that represents roughly 2 million of revenue. And so, consolidated, it's a total of 8. There has been some shift in the mix of revenue. So we had more product sales historically, like a higher dollar volume of product sales, which is pretty low margin, and it's been replaced by much higher margin recurring revenue. So rough revenue over revenue were basically flat, but the profitability is way up, and the composition of the revenue is much better, in my opinion.
How'd you put the financing together? Did you do SBA loans or how'd you do that?
The initial platform, DataTel, I used an SBA loan and my own personal capital.
Okay. And so at this point, you probably haven't changed value that much, except for if the bottom line's grown, it's probably increased. So you've got some equity being built up that way. Have you, but I suppose you still have a pretty good slug of debt on these things.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, there's been some nominal debt pay down. I'm not really a huge fan of paying down debt early, just given the tax benefits to having interest. So, but yeah, no, I'll pay down debt when I refi or sell.
Yeah. So fast forward, I mean, you're growing, you're switching up your mix of revenue to be more higher margin. Are you going to keep doing add-on acquisitions if you can?
Absolutely. That's in my mind, like my personal goal was, I when I started this out, my mission was, all right, I'm going to figure out how this business works the first 12 months. And then every year after that, I want to make one acquisition and then have time to acquire, integrate, get our feet under us, and then find, the next one, but hopefully have a pipeline of opportunities and relationships down the road. So
yeah,
that's kind of one of my special sauce aspects, right? Like I can go and find opportunities, and then I can create relationships with owners, and I can close a transaction and integrate them. So like, I think I'd be dumb not to pursue that strategy, because I just enjoy it a lot, and it's just such a way to expedite what we're doing and our capability. I like this last acquisition has expanded our service set and capability by 2 or 3x in terms of value to our clients. And so it's just transformative, to say the least. And every one of my employees will be like, yep, that was a really good idea. And so I want to have more of those, right? Like more of those like acquisitions that are like, wow, this is 1 + 1 = 5, which is rare.
Yeah, that sounds great. So you're on pace, you're in, you've got another acquisition. Do you have sounds like relationships in the industry that you're fostering to try to keep that activity going? What's your general strategy to keep deal flow going in the MSP space?
Yeah, I've got a couple of strategies. One is just direct outreach. So direct outreach to MSP owners, telling them about why they would want to sell to me, right? Like there's lots that want to sell direct to an owner who's going to stay with their business for 10 or 20 years. And then I'm launching a podcast called The MSP Owner, and where I'm going to be interviewing other MSP owners and hearing about their founding stories. And I just love talking to entrepreneurs and hearing about what they've learned. And I'm still new to the industry, so I'm taking advice and ideas whenever I can get it and applying it to my own business. And so it's kind of a hack in that way. And, people are like, oh, wow, you're pretty cool. Like, maybe we should work together. So those conversations happen naturally, a surprising amount of time. So those are kind of my two obvious kind of long-term paths, and they're ones that I enjoy doing. So
cool.
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick break from the show just to tell you about our companies for a second. I'm Patrick Dichter, and I own Appletree Business Services. We do quality accounting and tax nationwide. So if you're running a business or looking to buy a business, we'd love to help you out with accounting and tax services. You can find us at appletreebusiness.com. And Clint, tell us about Bison Business.
Yeah, Bison Business is my firm. We do nationwide M&A. So we help people buy and sell companies. Most of our customers have companies in the 1 to 20 million revenue range, profitable businesses. So if you've got one and you're ready to get acquired, you can reach out to us at bisonbusiness.com for a complimentary evaluation. We can get you to market and get you sold. If you're a listener that's a buyer that wants to buy a company that size, make sure you're on our email list, because we'll send you out deals first before they hit the market anywhere else. But we'd love to serve you anytime you're thinking of acquiring or selling your business. We want to be your first stop at Bison Business.
Awesome. Now back to the show.
fast forward, you said 10, 20 years is just kind of casually while you were talking your strategy. Like, what is the end game here? Like, what if you get 5 years down the line and you've been, your SBA loan is dwindling, it's cut in half maybe, and your enterprise value is really increased from some of these add-ons, and somebody comes up to you and gives you a kind of top of market offer 5 years from now that maybe is not stupid money, but is where you could say, man, that moves the needle for me. That feels like life-changing money. I don't know whether that's 5, 10, 15 million, where you might be able to be 5 years from now. It just depends on how your acquisition strategy goes, that you can walk away with. Does that tempt you at that point? Or do you feel like you've got kind of like this long-term vision here? Or how do you think about the sell or don't sell conversation? And at what point do you start entertaining offers? Because this is a space where, there's buyers come in hot and heavy to MSP space, especially once you start getting more and more scale in your network. You're going to have private equity players and all these different, people with deep pockets that want to partner with you or buy your company from you. So when do you start taking that call, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say with my first business that I ran, I was very much focused on the outcome, right? Like I was doing it to get to where I wanted to go financially. And I sold. And with my new business, I've got a much different mentality and focus. Like I'm trying to much more focus on the journey of the here and now and enjoying myself and having fun and letting myself explore and do those sorts of things. So like I'm much less, I need to get here because of a reason. Like I don't really have, we have goals internally, right? Like we want to get to 20 million of revenue in 4 or 5 years, in our EOS plan, right? So that's kind of where our team is triangulated. But like from a personal perspective, like I just want to go and achieve, have fun, make my business better, enjoy what I'm doing, like the people I'm working with, be around a bunch of winners, don't hang out with losers, kind of like the basics of like living a good life in my work environment is honestly what I'm focused on right now, and I'm having a blast. So
cool. So you're running EOS. You've sold a business before, so you are building that business where you're doing your accounting right, you're doing your systems right, you're building in a leadership team, obviously, to where it sounds like you're taking that strategy of I want to build a business and never have to sell, but I easily could if I wanted to someday. So if that changes and you're not having fun anymore, it's not.
Yeah, I can't help but move towards a direction that's better. Like it's kind of in my nature, and what better means is more sellable, more valuable, something that runs on its own. So like I'm always pushing towards that direction, and whatever we do, I'm trying to gear up and level up my management team and my leaders and find the right people that are going to help take the business to the next level. And I feel like we're moving in the right direction. Like it was like we were doing our EOS meeting and everyone was saying about, hey, what are the goals that we want to hit in the next few years? And I'm saying some numbers out there, and everyone was just like, dude, you're thinking way too small. Do you see what we have here? And the entire management team is like being like, no, we can do way better than that. They're like thinking you're just being way too conservative about this. So when I hit that point, I was like, oh wow, like this is cool. Like this is really cool. So that's the sort of stuff that gets me juiced up, and then I'm like, oh man, like I'm just trying to be like a people aggregator for good people at my company, like getting as many good people as possible who wants to work with other really good people, and like magic will ensue. Like there's just so much, it feels like there's so much momentum, right? Like I love the feeling.
I love it. Sounds Patrick like he's in the inspired column right now.
Yeah.
That's the name of our show, and how we like to think about it. Is like, is this entrepreneur we're talking to, are they inspired for the long haul right now? Or are they kind of in their happy place where they're
totally? Reminds me of our last guest, Alan. He talked about like these phases he had to get through with his business, and then he was like, I looked around and I just had this like rock star leadership team, and he's like, now I'm just like letting them, run and live up to their potential. So,
yeah,
I'd be curious. So you've been in the dental space and now you're in the MSP space, and those are two categories that so many people want to be in. When you were looking for a business to buy for your next venture, like what was your criteria, or were you totally focused on this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably just pull up my Bardo Capital website and look at the criteria because it's still up. But if I recall correctly, it was like 1 to 5 million of EBITDA, cash flowing, significant recurring revenue, like greater than 60 or 70%. I wanted it to be business services, ideally. And I wanted to buy from a retiring owner specifically. And locationally, it needed to be, the business model needed to be such that I could acquire and operate it from Austin, Texas, where I live, and I wasn't really planning on moving. And that needed to be in there, and the business needed to be big enough, like size and structure wise, to have a full management team where I could be CEO and not a GM. So those were the 6 or 7 hard requirements for opportunities that I looked at.
Did DataTel check every box?
Yep, it did.
Well,
Clint was about to say he has those all the time as a business broker, And
do you? I get the emails. People
every search fund bro in the world emails him looking for that, but no, I think that is like the unicorn, right?
I usually tell people to like, hey, pick a few of those things, but you usually don't get all of them. So it is kind of unusual, Ben, for you to check every box like that. But kudos to you.
So I mean, high level. I mean, I'm probably oversimplifying and making it seem better before you acquire. It doesn't feel like that because you don't know exactly what you're buying, and there's components to it that can be risky, right? Like the owner was retiring. Like how important were those relationships? A lot of the business had a lot of voice in it, like voice over IP, on premise voice revenue. And so that was declining, right? Or part of that was declining, the hardware stuff, and then the VoIP was obviously increasing as well. But there's some dynamics around shifting of their own internal model that was like, I needed to do some work, and that's part of the work that we've done over the past 12 months. So this was not if you were to look at it, you wouldn't have been like, oh, this is a complete home run when you're looking at it prior to acquiring. But what I think we've made it into is what I envisioned, all the requirements, right? And then some, but it wasn't exactly there prior to close. And there were definitely questions like, oh, is this the right path, right?
Did you have a really competitive process on that deal to get it?
It was a brokered process. So I wouldn't say it was super competitive. I mean, there were multiple bidders and multiple different potential buyers. There were some strategics that were looking, and I connected with the seller pretty quickly, and we started to have a good relationship and started to negotiate an LOI. And we ended up hitting a roadblock at one point, and the LOI discussions about some random topic that I don't even remember what it was, and it would like came to a standstill, and I just was like, dude, let's just put this on hold. What are you doing tomorrow? Me and my wife are flying out. We're just going to come and have dinner with you and your wife and hang out and not talk business. So we flew up to Boise, hung out with the seller and his wife, and had a great time. And suddenly the issue went away. And we had an even better relationship and moved forward, and, took some time after that, but ultimately closed. So, I think that was a really smart and helpful thing to like level what was going on, because it really wasn't a thing that was meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Feels like every deal kind of stalls a couple of times along the way. And then the other change you're talking about, like better ideal services, maybe a better tech stack. Did you know those things pre-close, or did you learn that from being in the business or like a peer group, or how did you decide to shift?
Yeah, there was like just things during diligence that you're easily able to see, like, okay, yeah, we got to change this, we got to adjust this. They were on a health plan that was wildly expensive and not providing very good benefits to the employees. So I was like, okay, that I have to absolutely fix. There's a laundry list of things, including we replaced literally every single system within the first 12 months that the company used, with the exception of, Microsoft 365. Lift and shift of a bunch of different stuff that was on the list. I knew most of the things that needed to happen and was confident that I could, move it forward.
Awesome. And this second deal, was that a broker deal as well, or is that off market?
Yeah, that was off market. I ended up, I was doing outreach. I do email outreach, and I also do some posting on social media websites as well. And one of the owners responded, and we started a conversation. And I think from the initial contact to closing the deal, it was like 9 weeks, something like that. So really fast turnaround, from initially talking to ultimately buying the business.
Wow. How'd you finance that one?
I financed that via cash. So cash generated over the last year was more than enough to pay for it.
Cool. So you just did a cash deal, made it quick, no banks. Any seller financing or just all cash?
It was all cash.
Cool. Very good. I would love to, if we can, Patrick, like, just because of the nature of the show, how we like to think about the exit conversation, and because we have Ben here, it's not his first rodeo. He's had a substantial exit before he got into DataTel. I was wondering if we could just click rewind. Can you take us back to your mental space before that exit, Ben? And kind of like you said, at that point, it was more about an outcome, and what you're doing now is more about the journey. How were you? What was your headspace like at that time, and what made you like get into that exit conversation on your first major exit?
Yeah, I would say it was more opportunistic. There was an opportunity where my partner was like, I want to continue growing this business. Like, we're crushing it. We should do this. Like, we need to move forward. And then I was like, man, I want to go learn new things. I want to go try things on my own. Like, there was just kind of a natural divergence, and he aligned with where the business was going. And then we were doing a refi, or we were doing a capital raise plus a buyout. And so we made it kind of one and one, and it was kind of opportunistic, but kind of like it aligned with where the business wanted to go long term and where I wanted to go. So it aligned pretty well. At times I wasn't really sure if it was going to happen, but it did. And it was like, okay, cool. Now I can go figure out other things and go learn, right? I'm a constant learner. Like, I love learning and figuring new things out. And so I just hit a point where I'd been at the business for 5 years, and that was the longest I've ever been at a company, right? Mm-hmm. Before that was 2 years at any role. So 5 years is like a lifetime.
Was it kind of like a private equity partner that came in and replaced you in the partnership so that they could kind of empower your partner to go the direction he wanted to go?
Yeah, it was basically growth private equity.
Yeah.
So he stayed on, continued running the business, and was a minority investor came in.
Great. And so what did that do for you? And where were you at in life at the time? Were you married yet at the time, or how did that change your life, if any?
Yeah, married. My wife and I had been together since junior year of college. So long time. We were married. I acquired the business while we were still dating, I think. So I signed the purchase agreement when we were on a trip abroad, and I bought the business and also asked her to marry me like the same week.
Wow.
I recall. So, but when we sold, Yeah, it definitely was life changing for us because we had like achieved the goal that we wanted to get to. And my wife still had her job. She worked at as a senior product manager at Amazon. And I had sold, and we transitioned myself out pretty quick. And then she was still working. And then I think she had a conversation with one of my friends who's in my EO forum, my local peer group of entrepreneurs that I hang out with. And one of my buddies asked my wife, he's like, why are you working? Shouldn't you like take some time off and like go do something? Like, you love to travel. And she's like, we do. Like, I'm actually maybe we should do that. And then she came home and we talked about, she was like, hey, I've got an idea. I should quit my job and like, let's go travel. And so we're like, it was like a 5-minute thought. And then we're like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
And then we spent 9 months, traveling, and me trying not to work, having worked, 80, 90 hours a week the last 5 years, telling myself, okay, it's cool not to work. Let's not promise yourself not to get into anything the next 9 months, and really just like be okay with not doing that. And that was really awesome. I had a bunch of just time off and just like the ability to completely disconnect and be bored and explore other things. And, we did 2 weeks of a Spanish school immersion program. It was one of the many things that we did. So just like explored. And that was really, really awesome. And my wife still says we should have done it for longer. But no, that was awesome. And at the end of that, it was like, what do I want to do next with my life? And am I really cut out to be an entrepreneur? So asked myself that. And, by the end of it, I was like, I think I can do this again. And I'm going to do it in a different way, kind of something more on different terms. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like my promise to myself.
What were the main terms? Stress or hours or?
I would say not focusing so much on the end outcome, but really being focused on like, what am I excited to do over the next year? What do I want to build? What do I want to achieve? Like kind of the short-term stuff that I know brings a ton of enjoyment and value for me personally. So that's the sort of stuff versus like, dude, you're in it to get in here. If you don't meet budget, like your week is ruined and you're miserable to everyone around you. Like, I didn't really want to live like that anymore.
I'm wondering how that impacted your search criteria, because when I think of your range you were talking about earlier, that 1 to 5 EBITDA, that's a great range. I feel like for a seasoned entrepreneur that you've built, scaled, and sold, and you have some capital, I feel like it's a range that has enough scale that you can build kind of like a little bit more lifestyle design into it than if you had, say, like a 500,000 EBITDA one, where if you go through a rough, transitional first year, you may end up feeling like you're not making any money, you're stressed out again, and you're asking yourself, why did I do this? When you're not a rookie anymore, and you've had an exit and you've had some success. Do you feel like that getting above that 1 million EBITDA was a critical factor for you to feel like that's enough scale that I can have some leadership in here with me? I can have some margin for error on the cash flow. And was that a big part of your criteria?
100%. It was mostly driven by size. Like, I didn't want to do the actual services, right? I wanted to be a CEO and lead the vision. So like necessarily, I just very rarely do I come across businesses under 1 million of EBITDA that are structured like that. So at least in my opinion, so 100%, that was part of the calculus and part of what I wanted, because again, this is about me hopefully designing a better version of entrepreneurship for myself that aligned with my personal goals and the things that I cared about now.
What does a typical week look like? Are you working 40 hours a week? Are you on the road a lot? You have a kid now, right? Like what does business and life look like these days?
Yeah, I probably work like 50 hours a week, maybe 50. But like, I mean, something's always on the brain, right? So I don't know what you define as working, right? But yeah. And, I mean, I take my 1.5-year-old to school, to daycare every day, and we spend a bunch of time together. I try to not work on the weekends unless I have to. I'm not killing myself, but I'm working hard, and I'm having fun doing it. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it.
Are you still an EO?
Yeah, I am.
So the same board you were with the dental company?
Yeah, I joined EO and right at the starting of COVID. So like literally the first weeks it was, what, 2020? 4 years?
Do you mind just telling our listeners that aren't familiar kind of what that is and what that's meant to you over the years as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I joined Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. It's basically there's a local chapter here in Austin. There's about 240 other entrepreneurs who have businesses over 2 million of annual revenue. So decent sized businesses. And usually it's people who are interested in joining a small group of 10, 8 to 10 other entrepreneurs who you end up getting to know really well on a monthly basis. And you really get to dive into your business problems, your personal problems, and just have a really strong entrepreneur friend group. And that experience transformed how I thought about entrepreneurship, what it meant to be an entrepreneur, what success looked like. I saw people who had been on their 4th, 5th, 6th business and saw that like no matter how much money you have, people still have problems. And just kind of a sobering but also like an empowering experience across the board. So now it's hard to communicate the value, but it has been one of the things that's provided the most value to me in my professional career, without a doubt.
I'm in the same boat. I'm a member of C12, which is a similar organization, and it's a CEO peer group with similar sized companies. And just being a CEO can be lonely sometimes, and
So lonely.
You can share a lot with your leadership team, and EOS is great for facilitating honest conversations at your company. But like, there's still some things that owner to owner just that's the only people that can truly understand you to some degree. And being around a peer group, no matter whether it's EO, Vistage, C12, any of these organizations, is invaluable. And I think once you got a company that qualifies for one of these groups, I really do think it's a no-brainer for any of you out there that are a listener. It may not make any sense on paper, but like if you get into it, like just go visit one of these groups. And especially where people are being really raw and vulnerable and you're behind this confidential veil with peers, how powerful that can be for your life. It just makes you better as a person. And if you're better as a person, you're a better leader, your company's better, and the ROI pays off in all kinds of ways. And I don't know if EO does this, but C12, they bust you about like your family, and you're like, they make sure that you're taking care of the house and taking care of the business, and taking care of your mental and spiritual health, and so it's not just all how do we drive more EBITDA, how do we grow, but it's like, how do we grow sustainably in a healthy way with good culture. And so it's checking on you from a bunch of different angles.
Yeah, I think EO, it's definitely, I would say it's more in the mindset of like, they use this thing called forum mindset or gestalt, or it's this idea that you're not supposed to make judgments or provide advice to other people. You just share your own experiences. So it's meant to be it's actually not even it sounds like C12 might have a little bit more of a directive. You need to make sure your stuff's in order, accountability, there's, that sort of stuff. And EO, it's like, you're just learning from other people's experiences. And if you say something, I can tell a story that impacted me, and that's my own truth. And that's crazy valuable.
Yeah, we start off our meetings with a life wheel, which we score ourselves based on our own subjective truth of like 1 to 10 in a bunch of different areas. So it'll be like mental health and physical and spiritual health, and how's your business going, and your family, and all these different areas. And then if you're reporting in, like I'm at a 2 in this area, then it kind of becomes like, hey, what are you going to do about that? Because we don't want to see each other suffering in a major area of life. So yeah, it's not necessarily like dictating the solution, but it's being accountable for self accountability, or like, hey, we're all cheering for you here, and we want to see you healthy and in all these areas. And what can we do to help? What are you going to do? Can you report back next time on some progress there? And we're checking in on each other, and that's just invaluable as a starting point at each of our meetings. So yeah, it's huge.
I love the life wheel. I've set goals like that at the start of the year for a long time. And I don't know how you feel, Ben. You talked about like leveling up as a leader and training your leaders. The last 2 companies I was at, it was very much about like leading somebody professionally and also like leading them personally. Like when I was leading sales teams before, I would ask my sales reps, like, what's going on with the student loans? Are you going to pay those off? Or like, are you going to set a goal to run a half marathon or something? And I feel weird doing that now with accountants. I don't know how else to say that. I just feel weird, like leaning into that too much, but I don't know what it's like
on
for
the
you.
Personal side or what?
Yeah. Like I bring some of that in, but it's not the same element as it was in my last 2 companies. But I don't know if you feel that way as a leader, like trying to talk life and, personal stuff outside the business as you lead them, because I do think there's tons of overlap, however we try to do it, But.
Yeah, it's hard not to. Yeah, I mean, I try to incorporate it. Like, I want to understand the motivations around people, especially the ones close to me. I want to make sure that I'm providing them what they need, right? Like from a professional, from a personal standpoint, in the job, am I giving them the support they need? Where do they think they can level up? What can I do personally and professionally, right, for them? So it's man, I don't know. I try to get pretty deep in there. I try to understand, like, hey, what are, one of the things I asked the other week was like, who, each of my management team members, like, what do where is your destination trip, right? Like, where do you want to go in the future? And then being able to know, hey, maybe that's something I can provide them in the future, right? If they hit something, right? Like, so I make notes of that through time and trying to build up, like, what are the things that are really important to people and being able to provide that to them, right?
That's awesome. That's great. One of the other things we mentioned pre-show is you kind of transitioned the culture from in-office in Idaho to distributed team. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did you do that? How's that been for you? Like, I know personally, I waffle back and forth on office. So yeah, talk us through that.
In-office versus remote has been, my last company was mostly remote. Like, we were up to 150 employees and we had like 20 people at our HQ. So I was used to running a distributed team across multiple states. And yeah, when I bought the company though, it was entirely in office. They had 1 remote employee. And so that has transitioned to roughly 30% are remote in some way, not in an office. And so that's been a big shift over 15 months, but I think it's been hugely valuable and beneficial across the board. Especially from a recruiting perspective, from a business quality perspective, right? Like, being reliant on having to hire people within 5 miles of your office is like one of the strangest things that I've seen. That if that's going to be your constraint to growing your business, it seems kind of silly not to look at the alternatives, but like, that's my opinion. So I want to be able to find the best people for the role, no matter where they're at. And that means you have to hire remote and you have to learn how to work remote. And we're an IT company. So, we have the tools to do it. And it's more of a culture shift rather than a tool or if it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I can build a bigger, better, more profitable company with better culture. And, and I think there might be a risk to, hey, you don't get to see people in person as often. And there's definitely a relationship building that happens in person that it just happens so much better in person. But I think you can achieve that by having, certain things like annual parties or, multiple, trips with your management team to see them in person every so often. And I feel like those are honestly even more impactful than if I'm in the office every day with the same person. It's just gets old, right? I see my management team every 8 weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so great to see. Like, it's so much fun. Like it's just a different level. And I feel it works better for me, honestly. I don't know, but I would be very curious to ask my management team, like, how they think it's changed. I think they would all say they like the way that it's run now, but I'm also paying them. So I don't know completely, but I think it's better right now.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So switching gears one more time, you have this email list where you send out structured deals. Can we talk about that? Like, what does that look like? What have you learned in doing that? What's the goal in helping blast out these, acquisitions where people are looking to raise some investor money?
Yeah, I started the SMB Junction, smbjunction.com, because I wanted to allow people who are trying to buy businesses to be able to find access to investors and more easily raise equity capital. And because that just didn't exist when I was acquiring my companies. So I thought, well, let's see if it works and let's do a fun side project. And so there's been hundreds of there's been, I think it's like 125 deals so far that have been submitted through the platform, of which, a portion of those have gone out. And it's been really interesting to see the quality and especially the deal structure portion of it, because it's people's first attempt at going to market. And so you can see what people are going out at and what they're proposing and what the terms are. And so I made them be very specific with like, hey, you're raising this much money. This is your capital structure. This is exactly what the terms are of the deal. And if you didn't provide terms, there's no way I'm distributing. And just so I had clarity to know that they knew what they were doing. It's just really interesting. It also made me feel like, I just got insight into all the flow that's happening and the deal size and that sort of stuff. So it was really enlightening to see like how big the market was and who the people were that were actually getting deals done versus not, and the tactics for which people tried to do and like the processes, right? Like when someone came out and they did a submission, I could just look at the deal and be like, are these guys going to buy this company or not? I'd know with pretty high confidence, just because I've seen a bunch of deals in the past, but it was just interesting. The people who could like put things together and communicate definitely had a much better chance of succeeding.
Makes sense. I'm sure you can spot trends quickly. Have you invested in some of them?
Yeah. I've invested in a few. My business ramped up as the SMB Junction ramped up too. So I didn't have a ton of time to personally pursue some of these, so I really just tightened my criteria, and I was like, I'm only going for stuff where I know I can get 3 to 4x my money, and I'm seeing 35 to 40% IRRs. And the market's just been getting really competitive from the investor side too. Like LP money is flowing, and the returns, I think, were like getting to a point where I was like, okay, like this doesn't make any sense. I'd rather have my money and invest it in my own business because I can make a much higher return on this. So I tightened up my criteria because I saw that happening. So I'm still actively investing, but like I'm only going for stuff that I know is like a triple or a home run.
Got it. And I know it's early, but are those operators doing okay or growing the businesses or hitting the plan?
I've got one that's probably like I might get half my money back, right? And then the others, I think I've done 8 or 9, and all the rest are, I've had one that's returned, over 3x, and then a few that have returned my capital back, and the rest are kind of like they don't plan to return capital at any point, but they're doing fine. So
Right.
I think pretty decent. I think it'll end up like hitting, there's just not a lot of distribution. Like this isn't a hugely diversified portfolio, right? So I have one big winner. It's going to make up for basically all of them, kind of like a VC approach.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to definitely clear my hurdle with the one winner for sure.
Nice. I'm sure time will tell on the others. So
yeah.
Cool, man. Where's that going over time? Are you going to keep that kind of facilitating conversations between investors and entrepreneurs as kind of a side gig for you, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an opportunity to like create something really interesting there, and I've talked about how to actually make it a platform, how to monetize it. When I got into the monetization, I just started like being like, oh God, this reminds me of healthcare. Like so many rules and regulations around the SEC. I'm like, God, this sucks. I'm like, I started looking into it. I was just like, God, I just want to avoid this. And so I was like, gonna monetize it. And then I was like, okay, this is too much brain damage for me. Like, let's just focus on fun business stuff,
Yeah.
But there's definitely a huge opportunity there. And, I've been talking to some folks to potentially like take what I have and like build a more structured platform around it, and maybe, charge an investor fee on the front or something, or charge the searcher, a flat fee to be able to have access to the, it's a connector at the end of the day, right?
Got my wheels turning.
Yeah. If you have any ideas, let me know.
Me and Patrick are going to take this one down after we take down our last episode.
Yes.
We always talk about wanting to do deals from the show. It sounds like.
Be like a shark.
No, it's just funny because we meet some of the coolest people on here that have amazing business models, and sometimes they're thinking about exiting or partners. And so, Patrick and I are kids in candy stores sometimes thinking of ideas. And with me having a deal facilitation business and him having an accounting business, and like there's always synergies and things to explore. So it's a lot of fun. It sounds like, part of your big picture too is to be doing what we're doing, hosting your podcast, getting around other entrepreneurs in your space, specifically in the MSP space, and then let magic and serendipity take over there as well with relationships and contacts. And it sounds like that's already kind of happening with your deal, not syndication, but just with your connection you're building there. But it's going to probably get more focused as you get into the media and podcast space too.
Yeah, I think about it as like putting myself in the area where opportunity is. Mm-hmm. So like I just try to go to where the opportunity is and then be open to it. I think that's like what I'm good at.
Increasing the surface area of luck, someone said.
Who said that? Clinton?
I don't remember. It wasn't me, but I remember it was good.
This has been a really fun episode, Ben. It's awesome to hear that you've already grown the business, and I'm sure if we follow up with you in a year or two, you'll be even bigger and hopefully hitting some of the goals that your management team set. So if people want to connect with you online, where should they do that?
Good question. If they want to connect with me online, they could probably hit me up on Twitter at Ben Tig with 2 G's, or LinkedIn is totally fine as well. And then the plugs that I have right now would be I'm starting a podcast called MSP Owner. And so you can go to my LinkedIn to find the link to that. And then if you own or are a part of a business that needs managed IT services and want someone you need help on that front, we've got an incredible team that I would have loved to have had at my business. And so that's the type of service that I want to provide. And I think I could provide folks who are looking. So reach out.
Awesome. We'll link that in the show notes as well. So thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon, Ben.
Thanks. Appreciate it.